Coming up on Tech News Weekly, we kick off the show with my interview with Mark Gurman from Bloomberg to talk about Apple's dip into AI by way of large language models.
And then we actually end the show, there's stuff in between, don't worry, with Megan Morrone, who wrote for Fast Company. You might remember Megan. She talks a little bit about artificial intelligence and therapeutic uses of artificial intelligence. Very interesting stuff.
Plus, I talk about a TikTok from IMAX that has everyone screaming, "Why is there a Palm Pilot on the wall?"
I didn't know they were still around. And then, of course, we've got Netflix. That's my story of the week. Had an earnings call, really good earnings. But they're making some changes to their tiers, and I'm curious how the writers and actors strike is going to impact that.
All of that coming up on Tech News Weekly.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Cisco Meraki. Without a cloud-managed network, businesses inevitably fall behind. Experience the ease and efficiency of Meraki's single platform to elevate the place where your employees and customers come together. Cisco Meraki maximizes uptime and minimizes loss to digitally transform your organization. Meraki's intuitive interface, increased connectivity, and multi-site management keep your organization operating seamlessly and securely wherever your team is. Let Cisco Meraki's 24/7 available support help your organization's remote, on-site, and hybrid teams always do their best work. Visit meraki.cisco.com/twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 295, recorded Thursday, July 20th, 2023. Oppenheimer, powered by Palm Pilot.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ZocDoc, the free app where you can find and book appointments online with thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed physicians and specialists. Filter specifically for those who take your insurance, are located near you, and treat almost any condition. Go to ZocDoc.com/TNW and download the ZocDoc app for free.
And by Drata. Security professionals often undergo manual tasks of collecting evidence. Well, with Drata, companies can complete audits, monitor controls, and expand security assurance efforts to scale. Say goodbye to manual evidence collection and hello to automation, all done at Drata speed. Visit drata.com/twit to get a demo and 10% off implementation.
And by the AWS Insiders podcast. Search for AWS Insiders in your podcast player or visit cloudfix.aurea.com/podcast. We'll also include a link in the show notes. Our thanks to AWS Insiders for their support. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts and I am back. I am Mikah Sargent.
I'm the other guy, Jason Howell. Good to have you back sitting at the table. It just feels empty when you're not here.
Back in the saddle.
Back at the table again.
Yeah. Happy to be here. Happy to be doing this show and very excited about what we're going to kick things off with today because this was kind of a late breaking bit of news as far as this show goes, because typically we have to find some folks earlier in the week, get them on the show. I happened to see this news fly by and excited to be joined today by Mark Gurman of Bloomberg to talk about Apple's experimentation with AI. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Thanks both, as always, for having me. Glad to be here. Happy to talk about AI.
Yes. So let's do that. Of course, we've got ChatGPT. We've got Google doing Bard. We've got Microsoft with its Copilot and all of this magic that's going on. But some would look at Apple and say maybe the company isn't sort of putting something out there. But you have heard that internally, the company is working on something. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll dig in with even more.
Yeah, Apple's definitely a laggard here, not just because they haven't announced anything, but because they're not, particularly close on anything compelling or anything consumer grade in the AI space. Typically, Apple is a little bit behind the competition in terms of these next generation technologies. They try to come in here and they try to do something better. I would expect them to try to pull the same, rabbit out of the hat, or bunny out of the hat this time too, right? They have their own internal tool they've developed based on an LLM called Apple GPT or Ajax GPT. Those are some names that people inside the company call it. It's based on a new LLM, large language model framework they've created called Ajax, or Applejax for short. It's based on Google Jax, which is an ML framework from Google. And within Apple, they're running it on Google Cloud. But the idea is to develop their own large language model that runs on their own cloud infrastructure, in addition to their own consumer generative AI product that they hope to introduce sometime next year. And it's unclear exactly what that's going to be because they don't necessarily have a plan of record yet for what they're going to do. But they do have many people working on LLMs at the company. They're all in on AI and LLMs throughout the organization at this point. This is a new thing that they're ramping up for, and this is going to be a big part of what Apple's doing over the next 2 years.
So that's fascinating. What you just said about the current version, it's based on Google Jax. It's running on Google Cloud. So this is an opportunity for internally the company to kind of see how to go about using a large language model before they develop their own entirely, or will, of course, this is a little bit crystal ball, but in the future, you see them completely doing their own, not something that is based on what Google has?
Yes, they are. They are doing their own. They are working on their own, and Ajax is the foundation of what they're going to be building. And this is going to be a powerful LLM. And the thing to know about LLMs, and I think a lot of people don't get this, is there's a reason why Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and now Apple have all been able to sort of pull something together around the same time within months of each other. That's because the fundamental technology that these generative AI products and these GPT products are using is all based on the same exact underlying tech. And the same underlying models. They're known as transformer models. So the technology is very much the same. Now, where do these companies differentiate? They differentiate on the training data, right? How you're training these models. And they differentiate with some of their secret sauce, their magic, and of course, the consumer output. So basically, Apple needs to reskin those underlying models to fit exactly the type of product they want to build. I believe that they're going to try to do something in the productivity and creativity app space longer term. But in the short term, I think they're going to try to integrate some sort of ChatGPT like functionality into the Siri app itself.
Got it. Okay, so this is really interesting because shortly after WWDC, and now now I've forgotten his name again. Daring Fireball. Gruber. Thank you. John Gruber had an event that he typically has, and it's a talk show live. And there, Craig Federighi was asked about Apple's sort of foray into AI. And one of the things that he talked about is, of course, this has been a conversation in years past as well, but this year saying, while we may not be saying AI, we've got it here, we've got it here, we've got it here. And one of the things that they talked about is in iOS 17, and you mentioned it in this piece, the improved autocorrect that's coming in iOS 17 is based on a transformer model, or is, at its heart is a transformer model.
Yeah, but it's not an LLM. So
okay, yes, could you clarify?
Yeah. So the autocorrect upgrade, they're trying to make it, they're trying to spin it PR and marketing wise into being some sort of LLM or some sort of major AI initiative. The actual technology for the new autocorrect is under 50 megabytes, for example, in terms of how much space it takes, right? A real LLM, a real generative AI product, that is terabytes, right, of data. Mm-hmm. So it's completely two different worlds. There's, as much as they want to try to make it one and the same, there is no comparison. And they're going to do that until they're ready to bring the real thing out the door, right? And so it's two different planets.
Interesting. Okay, so this is another question that I had for you, because in your piece you mentioned, quote, the company was caught flat-footed in the past year with the introduction. And one of the questions I was going to ask you, because it's a common narrative among Apple journalists or Apple coverers, is that the company does the wait and see approach, and they refine the tech and they do this and they do that. And so you have folks who see that as the way that Apple works, but then you have some folks who say, well, in this case, the company is behind, and they kind of compete with each other. But it's almost as if, from what you are mentioning, the company was caught flat-footed, but they are trying to make the appearance as though A, they're doing a wait and see approach, but B, they've already got this stuff underlying in the technology that they already have. But that differentiation that you just talked about, that 50 megabytes versus the multiple terabytes and all the processing power and stuff, suggests that maybe they're trying to sort of put a bandage on it or a stopgap and say, no, we're already doing this.
It's a mix of things. So I'll give you an example. Okay. So obviously the Vision Pro is coming out years after many of the other VR and AR headsets that have been on the market. But the reality with that device is that Apple has been working on it since 2015, right? So they weren't necessarily caught flat-footed. They were just extraordinarily slow to market, right? This AI thing, they were caught flat-footed in the sense is that they didn't even really start working on it until these things started to crop up publicly. So they really did miss the boat here. And quite frankly, they've been missing the boat on Siri and AI for years, even from the get-go, right? Yeah. And it's really amazing and embarrassing given that Siri was launched 4 years before any other competing service.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads into one of my questions about this is Siri. Of course, when we think of, it's funny because I feel like we talk a lot about AI as if it's this brand new thing that suddenly is here. But in many ways, on iOS, Siri is more or less an AI interface, maybe a lot, maybe a step down from where we're finding ourselves now. Same with Assistant on Google's side. Again, going back to the narrative of, Siri is not as good as the other ones out there. How does that potentially impact Apple's efforts when it comes to this AI play? Could that be seen as a disadvantage, kind of carrying that the burden of that history along with it, or really it's just proofs in the pudding? Let it speak for itself.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think Apple would be best served pretending Siri never existed. It's so interesting because Apple Maps has the same problem. Apple customers, especially the ones who are telling their friends about what to use and not to use, they have a very long memory and they get burned very easily. And so, the idea that Siri has been terrible for many years, it doesn't matter what amount of improvements or the range of improvements Apple makes to that product, it still carries that baggage from many years ago. Likewise with Apple Maps. Like Apple Maps is, I would say, borderline excellent at this point. Wall Street Journal had a good article about this the other day.
Yep, saw that.
And, people are starting to use it, but you're never going to be able to drop that baggage that Apple Maps had from the beginning. And it's been 11 years since Apple Maps launched. It's been, 12 years since Siri launched. And so that's not going to go away. So I think Apple would be best served by doing a rebrand of Siri. I don't know what they would call it.
I love Ajax. Hey, Ajax. That's
or it's a large language model. Call it silly.
Cleaning spray.
Silly. Yeah, exactly. Well, and speaking of that, the long memory, I see the same thing with HomeKit and Home. That initial launch and the first year or so of exclusivity where there weren't that many products, and now there's so many out there that work with it. It's a great system, but people, even in our sort of, tech sphere, still think that it is not a great system. And it's not because they haven't used it, that they think that, and that they still have that sort of narrative that's with it. One of the sort of, oh, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say that's fair. I mean, I wouldn't characterize HomeKit as a great system, but I do use it and it's mostly problem-free. I have not used the Google and Amazon home ecosystems enough to make a fair comparison, but in terms of maps and the voice assistants and such, I think I could fairly say with confidence that Siri and Apple Maps have both improved dramatically, but are both a step behind. Apple Maps, I think, has pulled away from its past way more than Siri has. I just think Siri, there's just so much baggage there. It's not deeply integrated enough into the system, and their AI efforts are sort of so all over the place that people don't really differentiate what AI is. And I think, what Apple considers or markets AI to be is different than what consumers think AI needs to be. And that's a marketing problem, right? And so Apple either needs to fix its marketing or align the way it positions AI to how modern day consumers think of AI. And they'll be able to better do that when they have the goods to offer next year.
The other thing that you talk about in this piece is this Apple GPT, an internal tool. What are engineers doing with this tool? And especially, we heard that Apple and many other companies said, don't put your information into something like ChatGPT because we're concerned that then that information is going to be used as part of the training model. It could blah, blah, blah. So what's going on internally? And is this tool, at the same level as ChatGPT? How does it work for them?
I think that was actually one of the driving forces behind releasing this tool internally, is because there's clearly a need or a desire for people in engineering environments to use something like ChatGPT to help with product prototyping, code testing, getting questions answered based on data it's trained with, based on summarizing text, based on rewriting code and such. And so I think those tools are very powerful. But the last thing Apple wants is Apple engineers using third-party tools, right, with Apple's confidential proprietary things that it's working on, right? So the need came about to actually build those tools for internal use cases. Does that make sense? And so in terms of the functionality, it's pretty much the same as ChatGPT.
Yeah. And then last, you mentioned next year where we could see the first kind of AI related announcement. There's
no plan of record, right?
Okay.
That's the problem. There's no plan of record yet. They haven't devised an actual consumer product strategy yet. So obviously that can fluctuate, but the goal is to have something next year.
And any ideas on what that could look like? Where do you see the company maybe putting its focus? I think there's a talk about Apple Watch technology. And
I would have to imagine that the first LLM rollout will be something to do with Siri, but next year they'll have this AI-based health coaching service. That's AI, but it's not like a generative AI or an LLM type of situation. It's just a different category of AI. It's more of a old school type of AI where you're learning the way the user functions. You're learning more about the user. You're taking data in from the user, you're taking metrics from the user, and then you're using it to build a personalized health coaching plan and recommendations for specific dieting, for specific health things, specific workouts, specific fitness tasks. So that's separate, but that is still AI. And don't you worry, they'll market it as such.
Yes, I think we will start to see Apple mentioning AI a little bit more than we have seen already. Mark Gurman, it is always a pleasure to have you join us for the show. Always sharing some great insights and some great quotes like Apple would be best served pretending Siri never existed. But thank you for your time. If folks want to follow you online and check out all the great work you're doing, of course, they can go to Bloomberg.com, but anywhere else they should go.
Yes, go to Bloomberg.com/poweron, please, to subscribe to my weekly column. Comes out every Sunday. You can follow me on Twitter, Twitter.com/Mark Gurman, and be sure to join the new Power On Discord to keep in touch with me and others who enjoy Apple.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mikah. Thanks, Jason. As always, I will see you next time.
Yes.
Thanks.
See you then. All righty, folks. Up next, we've got some stories of the week with Jason's coming first. But I do want to take a second to tell you about our first sponsor for this episode. It's ZocDoc. You know that feeling you get when you finally find the thing that you've been searching for on the internet? After spending hours researching, reading thousands of reviews, you finally find it. This thing, be it sparkly disco pants, perhaps a designer dog hoodie, or whatever it happens to be. It checks all of those boxes you have, and it's got 5 stars. And it arrives in just 48 hours. Yes, the heavens have opened up, the sun is shining down on me, and I can finally get that designer dog hoodie I've been looking for. So,
thankfully.
Right? Thank goodness. So, why is it that you can get this special thing you're looking for in just 2 days? But if you want to see a good doctor, it can take forever to get a doggone appointment. Why? Not to mention, how do you know if they're even actually good? Well, thankfully, there is a way. It's called ZocDoc. It's a place to find and book great doctors who have amazing reviews, many with appointments that are available within 24 hours. And ZocDoc is a free app where you can find amazing doctors and book appointments online. We're talking about booking appointments with thousands of top-rated patient-reviewed doctors and specialists. You can filter specifically for those who take your insurance, are located near you, and treat almost any condition you're searching for. These docs all have verified reviews from actual, real patients, not bots, not LLM-generated reviews. The average wait time to see a doctor booked on ZocDoc is between just 24 and 48 hours. Take that in. That's it. You can even score same-day appointments with ZocDoc. Once you find the doc you want, you can book them immediately with just a few taps in the app. No more waiting awkwardly on hold with a receptionist. Like I want to call a phone number in the first place. So go to ZocDoc.com/TNW and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/TNW. And I know all of you, very smart, very self-starter individuals, you could head to the App Store and type that in, but we need you to go to that URL, ZocDoc.com/TNW. That way it signals to ZocDoc that you heard about it on this show. And then you'll get that link to your app store of choice, ZocDoc.com/TNW. And we thank ZocDoc for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. And that means it's Jason Howell's Story of the Week.
Story of the Week. And then I have an interview coming up later with a guest you won't want to miss. Familiar to the show.
I've heard of them before.
Yes, indeed. So that's coming up a little bit later. But first, I thought we'd talk a little bit about Netflix. Seems to be one of our rotating topics that we focus on every month or two. They actually just made some pretty major changes to their pricing model. This happened yesterday, along with an impressive earnings report. I'll get to the pricing model in a second. But Netflix did really well. It wasn't that long ago that we were like, oh no, everything's going south for Netflix. Well, they added 5.9 million subs, rose revenue 3%, $8.2 billion year over year in that raise. So Netflix doing all right. Attributed in no small part to two things that we talked about on this show repeatedly. One, the crackdown on password sharing, which we aren't going to really focus on in this story. But two, its ad-supported tier.
Oh, yeah.
And to that end, Netflix eliminated its basic tier for the US and the UK, the basic plan that had no ads. This was basically the introductory plan that you could get without ads, the first foot through the door if you were willing to pay a little bit more and not get ads for Netflix. That started at $9.99 here in the US. That plan is gone now. And if you don't want ads, now going forward, you're going to have to pay $15.49. So that's kind of like the baseline. It used to be $10 in the US. Now it's about $15.50.
Wow.
So
it's quite a jump, actually.
It's a jump, exactly.
Is that how much I'm paying for Netflix? I need to get rid of this.
And I mean, this $15.50, I think is, I don't even know that you get 4K for that. So if you're getting 4K through Netflix, you're paying more.
I need
than
to
that.
check on this.
I think you're paying somewhere in the $20 range. Netflix actually made this change last month in Canada. So, the idea was that this would possibly happen in other markets, at least in the UK, according to some of the articles that I read. But of course, here they're rolling it out overseas. They're rolling it out here. Last year, you may remember, Netflix rolled out its ad-supported tier for the very first time. That's a $6.99 a month here in the US. And then in April, they added some extra features to that plan. They added, they upgraded it from 720p to 1080p. They also allowed more simultaneous streams. Well, one more, basically a total of 2 simultaneous streams if you have the ad-supported plan. Used to be 1. The basic, and actually once they upgraded this ad-supported plan, in many ways, it matched the feature set of the tier above basic. So it started to become, I think the lines started to get a little blurry. It's like, oh, you're paying the least, but you're getting a lot of the features that the tier above this basic entry level no ad plan would get. And so it started to kind of seem like, the time bomb was ticking for the basic plan to eventually go away. But what I think is interesting about this is it really shows just how profitable that ad tier must be.
Must be.
If
exactly.
Netflix is willing to kind of cut off that basic and say, if you want to pay less for Netflix, you have to get the ad tier. And I have to imagine they're getting a lot of interest. That has to be part of the reason why their year over year has increased, at least to a certain degree. Netflix seems like they're doubling down on that with this move. What I'm wondering is two different things. At what point do we see that $7 ad tier jump up to 10? That seems like an obvious, like, no-brainer going to happen eventually thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like they've cleared the way for it from $7 all the way up to $15.50. There's a lot of space in there, and if that's a tier that people are actually craving for or using, and we've seen that Netflix has no problem raising their rates over time and not really going backwards. I don't know. I think that's coming.
The writing's on the wall for sure. If it doesn't go up to 12.
Yeah, right. Although, that eventually, let's make our way there slowly over time, though, Micah. But yes, probably.
Let me slow you down there, Netflix. Listen, let's do 10 first. You'll get to 12.
We'll soften you up with the 10.
Yeah.
Then the next, 6 months later, we'll take you all the way to the 12
50 cents
point.
a year for the next,
I don't know anybody using the ad-supported tier, so I haven't really heard any direct feedback about it.
Especially because once you started out with no ads.
Yeah.
So I would find it hard to then go ads. In fact,
yeah, totally.
That was so. We were watching some shows on Disney Plus and Hulu, and then when those shows had ended, I was not interested in continuing to pay for Disney Plus and Hulu. So I canceled them. But my partner there were some shows that were older shows that he wanted to continue to watch. And so he got Disney Plus and Hulu, but did it with the ads.
Okay.
And then when a show popped up on Disney Plus we decided to do a marathon of, I think it was like Indiana Jones or something, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, whatever. And we started to watch it and it had ads and I'm like, I can't do this.
I can't do it. Oh,
so
man.
I ended up paying for the upgraded thing to go back to the no ads that we had in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think it would be hard to on Netflix be a no ads and then suddenly have ads. But for new people who are signing up, or I think this is the big one, little baby birdies in the nest that are then no longer in the nest, or who maybe they got pushed out of the nest, but they were still in their parents' plans, but now their parents can't let them be on there.
Right.
Then I could see them going for the ad version.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I can only compare this to YouTube, which for years I was on the YouTube Music kind of side of things for my music service or Play Music, whatever it was. It's been 5 different things over the course of the last decade. But along with that came a free subscription to YouTube Premium, which basically removed all the ads. And since I've turned away from YouTube Music, this was probably like a year and a half ago, kind of jumped on board with Spotify. And we don't pay for the premium YouTube anymore.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say premium Spotify. I was like, no.
We do have that, thankfully. That would be even worse.
Yes,
I can't imagine getting ads in between my songs. No, thank you. But anytime I watch YouTube, I'm served an ad now. And after many years of never seeing an ad on YouTube, it's stark. And now there's 2 pre-roll ads, one of which you can skip, but the first one you can't. It really depends on how it is. And it's hard.
I made the mistake of I didn't do for the music, but I did the YouTube, whatever it was called for the YouTube side of things. And then after going no ads, and I don't use YouTube that often.
Right. Oh, right.
But when I go there, I'm like,
Used to be so much better. Used to be so much easier.
That's how it works. I mean, that's how they get you, right?
Indeed. Real quick before we venture off the story of the week and get onto the rest of the stuff, I also think it's interesting that we are in the midst of a pretty major writer's strike. Mm-hmm. The actors have joined, so now it's not just a writer's strike. The actors are in it as well.
And they are spilling the tea, too. I don't know if you've been following that, but
for sure.
So many actors who are like, so you know how you think I'm rich?
Yeah.
Here's this numbers.
This. Here's the receipts.
Yeah, here are the receipts. Exactly.
I
don't have health insurance.
Yeah, totally, what? Right. And it's really interesting because a lot of this, I mean, so much of this is based on the fact that the streaming model has really upended and really wiped out these people's ability to do this as a career without having to get other jobs in an industry that used to be totally supported.
Yes.
And now, it's that kind of money transfer to the people who have a lot of money, and then the people who are working on these shows, their windows are shortened, but their contracts don't allow them to, do things for longer. And I guess my point with this whole Netflix thing is it's coming at an interesting time that these changes are happening, if these price raises happen, just because very soon the content pool is going to be a lot more limited. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how that's going to impact a longtime Netflix user's kind of view of what's on the network. And I mean, Stranger Things was set to start filming in the coming weeks, come out like early mid 2024, I believe.
Okay.
Now it's very uncertain. I mean, they're obviously not going to be filming. And I don't think that this sort of delay from a writer's strike and an actor's strike, it's not like once it gets figured out, everybody goes right back to it.
Exactly.
Everything takes time.
Yep. It's all a build up again.
And all those schedules, I mean, they're scheduled out literally for years. And so how does that impact what Netflix has going on in the next couple of years? Maybe it's just as an example of chickens coming home to roost sort of thing. You had it coming and here it is.
It's a lot, I think. It really is. There's so much involved in it, and it's hard to hard to dig into and understand like what the business model looks like, how it works. It's all going to work. It's a lot.
Do not know. But anyways, interesting stuff, as always, going on with Netflix. And I think the broader kind of online streaming model as well. We've enjoyed as fans of shows and TV, we've enjoyed a glut of high quality content. I think we're now starting to realize, oh, wait a minute, is that, does that support the people who are creating these things? Are they supported? Are these models from these streaming services, are they feasible in the long term? Maybe we're realizing that they aren't.
Yeah.
That major changes need to happen.
What does that future look like?
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, that's my story of the week. We got Mikah's coming up here, and I'm super interested in this. This is a fascinating thing that I never knew about IMAX. So hold your thought there. We'll get to that in a second. First, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Drata. Is your organization finding it difficult to collect manual evidence to achieve continuous compliance as it's growing, as it's scaling? Well, as a leader in cloud compliance software by G2, Drata streamlines your SOC 2, your ISO 27001, your PCI DSS, GDPR, HIPAA, providing 24-hour continuous control monitoring so you can focus on scaling securely. With a suite of more than 75 integrations, Drata easily integrates through applications that you're using, AWS, Azure, GitHub, Okta, Cloudflare. Countless security professionals from companies including Lemonade, Notion, and Bamboo HR have shared how crucial it's been to have Drata as a trusted partner in the compliance process. So you can expand security assurance efforts using the Drata platform. That allows companies to see all of their controls, to easily map them to compliance frameworks, to gain immediate insight into framework overlap. Drata's automated dynamic policy templates support companies new to compliance. Using integrated security awareness training programs and automated reminders ensure smooth employee onboarding. As the only player in the industry to build on a private database architecture, your data can never be accessed by anyone outside your organization. All customers receive a team of compliance experts. That includes a designated customer success manager. And Drata's team of former auditors has conducted more than 500 audits. Your Drata team keeps you on track to ensure that there are no surprises, no barriers along the way. Plus, Drata's pre-audit calls prepare you for when your audits actually begin. Drata's Audit Hub is actually the solution to faster, more efficient audits. You can save hours of back and forth communication, never misplace that crucial evidence that you need, and share documentation instantly. All these interactions, all interactions and data gathering actually occur in Drata between you and your auditor. So you aren't going to have to switch between different tools or correspondence strategies. Keeps everything focused. With Drata's risk management solution, you can manage end-to-end risk assessment and treatment workflows. You can flag risks, score them, and then from that point, decide whether to accept, mitigate, transfer, or avoid them. Drata maps appropriate controls to risks. That simplifies risk management and automating the process. Drata's Trust Center provides real-time transparency into security and compliance posture. That's going to improve sales, security reviews, and better relationships with customers and partners. So say goodbye to manual evidence collection. Say hello to automated compliance by visiting drata.com/twit. That's drata.com/twit, bringing automation to compliance at Drata speed. And we thank Drata for their support of Tech News Weekly and the TWiT network. All right, tell me, Mikah, what do IMAX movies and Palm Pilots have in common? Well, nothing, right?
Yeah, nothing. No. Let's take a look. I will describe this. Let's take a look at a TikTok that IMAX posted a week ago, where they were showing the sort of ridiculous engineering feats the company had to do in order to bring Oppenheimer to IMAX. I think it's 11 miles of film on these special reels. But as you're watching this video, it's a huge platter. You'll notice that the video starts out with a kind of zoomed in shot of a tablet of some sort, upon which you can see a Palm device that it appears to be some sort of Palm Pilot emulator running on a tablet screen. And as is the way of the internet, where IMAX was trying to show the film platter and they're talking about these little orange bits that helped to extend the platter out to be long enough for the runtime of Oppenheimer. Everyone instead focused on the tablet that is running what appears to be Palm OS software. So The Verge did a deep dive into this. Once again, David Pierce is responsible for my story of the week. Thank you, David. And this time it's about this Palm Pilot. So it says, the headline of the piece is, "Here's why the best IMAX movies still need a Palm Pilot to work." And they don't need, it turns out, a physical Palm Pilot. They can just use an emulated Palm Pilot. This is the M130. And this little device is basically controlling the system that feeds the film into the projector. It was released in 2002. It's got a tiny little 160 by 160 display. It's 2 inches diagonal, and a little tiny processor as well. But what this does is it will control what they call the, quote, quick turn reel unit, the QTRU, and it just makes it so that the reels that get fed into the projector are running at the proper speed for the film. So depending on what you're showing, how fast it needs to run, how slow it needs to run. It has to be running at all times, in this case as an emulation. And there are some little kind of details about this. And I won't share them all because I want everybody to go check out the article. But there's a little bit of text on there that says take up. And according to The Verge, who spoke with a person knowledgeable of how this technology works, take up defines which platter is ready to receive the film after it goes through the projector. There's a line called feed, which defines which platter is feeding film into the projector. So you could say, feed 1, feed 2, feed 3, which with Oppenheimer being 11 miles long and weighing 600 pounds, I would imagine that you would need to have some more reels. And then there's just a little line at the bottom that says locked. And if it's locked, that means it's ready. So it's locked and loaded, ready to go. Now, everything else is fairly mechanical. And I think that's what makes this really fascinating, is that the feeding process, the film process, all of that is very mechanical. And this Palm system that's part of the QTRU is kind of the only quote unquote high tech bit of the process. So something low tech in our modern world is the highest tech part of the process. And I think that adds to some of the charm that these film directors, have about this, that it's how we used to do things, and there's no reason to change it. And it worked that way before, so we might as well keep that going. Which makes me think about how folks like Christopher Nolan and others who are big film people might not be too fond of George Lucas, given that he was at the forefront of making digital film what it is today. So many films are produced digitally, and then there are these folks who are trying to hold on to the old way of doing things, and there's that combat there. Because if Lucas had not used funds to essentially bequeath theaters all around, at the very least the United States, maybe around the world, with digital projectors, then that would not have kicked off the revolution that is digital film, at least, for some time. So he kind of saw it as this is the future. And then he's like, but I'm not going to wait for the future. We're going to make it happen now. Now, it is, interestingly, they don't really touch the Palm Pilot device in emulator form, or even if it was in physical form. It just sits there. It is running kind of all on its own, and you don't really have to interact with it other than doing it. But I do want to read a little bit more. It says, quote, IMAX Engineering designed and manufactured an emulator that mimics the look and feel of a Palm Pilot to keep it simple and familiar for IMAX film projectionists. The emulator runs on a WinMate panel PC, which is a 10.1 inch Windows tablet that was designed to kind of be outside of conference rooms to do schedules and video conferencing. So they've taken this WinMate tablet PC and stuck it on the wall, and then they want these projectionists who have always used that Palm Pilot to do what they needed to do to continue to do that. And this really is, it just seems if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of situation, where why would they invest in doing this whenever everything works as it does, and then to run the risk of things not working, then there's no reason to do it. And of note, also in this Verge article, there are only 30 theaters worldwide that can even show this full 70 millimeter print. 19 of them are in the US. Most of the IMAX experiences out there are digital. So you would have to go to one of these specific locations. So if there are 30 and they're all running this Palm Pilot, let's let them keep running the Palm Pilot emulator on let me just read, I'm just going to read the full name. WinMate W10 IB3S PCH2AC PoE panel PC. Yes.
Just rolls off the tongue.
Does it not? It rolls off the tongue like that film rolling off the reel.
Yes, indeed. There is there is, I like that. The AMC Metreon in San Francisco will have this in its
full glory.
Yes.
Oh, so I should knock on the projectionist booth and say, "Can I see your Palm Pilot?"
He's like, you too.
That stupid TikTok.
Yeah, I read that article. I saw that TikTok. Yeah, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And
if you do fix it and then it breaks more, then why would you? Yeah, don't. Let's just leave it.
Yeah, and investing the time and resources into recreating something that exists in literally like a couple of handfuls of cinemas But at the same time, I mean, there is a time at which that thing's going to need to be replaced, right? Like it's not going to last forever, I can't imagine.
Right. But I wonder.
But maybe it does.
This feels like one of those situations where all of the projectionists are going, why did someone tell people this? Now they're going to come around and take away our Palm Pilots. You will pull it from my cold, dead hands.
Oh boy, this just reminds me. Once upon a time, I worked in the movie theater industry for probably like 5 or 6 years, and at one point, I managed a movie theater for a couple of years, and so at that theater, I wasn't responsible for replacing the platters. If I had worked at a different movie theater, I would have been. But there was a union projectionist there that kind of walked between two different cinemas to manage all of that stuff. But I was very close to and very familiar with the technology behind the scenes, which makes me really interested in like a kind of a nerdy like theater buff sort of way to get in the booth and kind of see one of these things rolling, because that platter is giant. I mean, it's huge. It's the fact that it's 600 pounds of film. Like, I would love to see this print.
11 miles of film.
I would love to see this print. I'm sure it's amazing.
All right. So that's my story of the week. And we have a great interview coming up, but I do want to take a moment to tell you about our third sponsor today. It is AWS Insiders podcast, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. AWS Insiders, it's a fast-paced, entertaining, and insightful look behind the scenes of AWS and cloud computing. And look, this is not your typical talking heads tech podcast. Never heard of those. It's high production value, high energy, and high entertainment. It's full of captivating stories from the early days of AWS to today and beyond. Hosts Rahul Subramaniam and Hilary Doyle dig into the current state and the future of AWS by talking with people and companies that actually know it best. Rahul is a veteran AWS pro with more than 15 years of experience managing more than 45,000 AWS instances. He's known for pushing AWS products to their limits and for believing AWS is truly the operating system of the future. AWS Insiders is a show that's full of opinions, takeaways, and untold stories about the challenges, innovations, and the mind-blowing promise of cloud computing. And there was a recent episode that I think anybody out there would find fascinating. It's called Behind the Scenes at Prime Day with AWS. And the guest on the show is Jeff Barr. For folks who don't know, he is the vice president and chief evangelist for Amazon Web Services. So one of the heads of AWS itself, who talks about Amazon's own experience with AWS in concert with Prime Day. And we're talking huge numbers, millions of requests per second, billions of products sold, and how AWS helped to make sure that Amazon Prime Day went off without a hitch. And when I purchased, I think, one product that day, I was able to get it and not worry about it not getting to me when it needed to. So really cool look, well worth listening to. There are some other episodes of what as well. Early in this season, they talked about filling the cloud talent gap, and then also Moderna, mRNA, and AWS, where they talk about Moderna being a cloud-first company. Very cool. So search for AWS Insiders in your podcast player or visit cloudfix.aurea.com/podcast. That's cloudfix.aurea.com/podcast. And of course, we'll also include a link in the show notes. Our thanks to AWS Insiders for their support. To listeners and viewers out there, we just wanted to let you know that in the next interview, we do talk about topics such as suicide and self-harm. If that's something you would rather not listen to or watch, please feel free to exit the episode at this time. Thank you. We are back from the break, and that means it's time for Jason Howell's interview.
That's right. Interview with a special guest. We're grappling right now with things like whether AI should be seen as an extension of humanity or maybe just a robot in disguise. And I think there's a lot of assumptions that are being made as to what humans really want out of these machines, whether those robots, I call them robots, but the AI, the systems behind them, can actually offer an experience that goes at least on par with what we get from a true human experience. And when we're talking about therapeutic instances and the use of AI for things like therapy, I think that's a perfect example of where we as humans have a certain expectation. Can the machine actually satisfy that expectation? So joining me, you may remember our guest from hosting such podcasts as, well, this one, Megan Morrone. It's good to have you back.
Hello, Jason. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. And I love your glasses game. I feel like every time I see you, you've got a new frame on and they're all fantastic.
Glasses on point. Plants on point. Good printer choice.
There you go.
Lovely
okay, we're going to
piano.
start rating your backdrop, your background.
I tried to come into the studio, but I was told I wasn't invited.
Oh,
well, I'll be.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
Okay. I was like, who are you about to drop under the bus?
I will stop by the studio, but it's hard to fit a third person in there in the middle.
Yeah,
right?
that's okay.
It's easier. That's what I meant.
My leg has to
I know
go
I'm
there.
always welcome there.
So that's where my leg is. So I'd have to move my
Right,
leg and I just don't know.
That's where my water bottle is. So anyways, we would always make room for you, Megan. It's so good to see you. So you wrote about AI therapy for Fast Company. You've been pretty busy writing articles I've seen this week, especially. So thought we'd talk a little bit about this because, and maybe we should take a step back first at the beginning here. You did some work kind of looking at how therapy with some of these different large language models, these chatbots, might going into this experience or experiment, whatever you want to call it. Did you believe that it could actually satisfy, offer a therapeutic experience on par with like a human being?
I really, that's a good question. I didn't have any expectations, really. I mean, I have been amazed by ChatGPT I feel like the first time I saw it in use was Mikah last November, December, right when it launched. And I was having you guys over and he asked ChatGPT what he should bring and said what the other people were bringing. It was this amazing moment. I was like, oh my God, this is my new best friend. So I guess, I was like, well, why can't it be a therapist? And I did some research and people have been using it. A lot of people have been using it. And I think actually all Bard and ChatGPT and, OpenAI that runs ChatGPT, they've been sort of changing things so that people can't use it as much as they have been. So it is a little bit more protecting vulnerable people. But yeah, I mean, to some extent, it really depends on what you see as therapy.
Yes.
And a lot of people confuse therapy with life coaching, which is normal. But I mean, anyone who's a life coach or a therapist would tell you specifically what the difference is between the two. But I have found that, just going through and, just using whatever my insurance can offer me, which is often some kind of third party thing where I match with someone, in Canada who's going to meet with me. And, basically what I found was they were telling me a lot of the things that people have been telling me for a really long time. If you have negative self-talk, then, here's reframe what you're saying. Or, it's the stuff that you and I would say to each other when we're having a conversation about how we're feeling. It's nobody needs a degree or needs to pay $300 an hour for someone to say, have you tried meditating? Well, yes,
right.
I have tried meditating.
There's the low-hanging fruit of therapy suggestions and recommendations.
Have you gone outside today?
Mindfulness, journaling. There's all these things. So then, I guess from that perspective, you spend some time with ChatGPT, you spend some time with Bard. Let's start there because the third one I'm super unfamiliar with. But we'll start with the two that everybody has already heard of. What kind of support were you able to get from these two systems? So what were they telling you, and was it satisfying?
They're very validating, which helps. And then it's a lot I asked it some more personal things, which is always risky, right? Because you don't know where this information is going.
Yeah.
But I asked him some parenting questions of I have some frustrations with my kid. I'm trying to get him to get a summer job. And that was helpful. One of the interesting things with Bard was, I said, it's July and he still doesn't have a job. Oh, no, I actually didn't even tell it was July. I just typed it in the middle of July and said, like, my son isn't getting a job. He's going to college in August. And it actually gave me the advice of like, well, it's kind of a little bit late to be looking for a job in July, but here's what you can try. So it was very practical things. ChatGPT, the same thing. You know, a lot of what we were talking about, like if you say like, I'm feeling sad, it will, you know, tell you all the basic things. And I'm not saying those things don't work. Like, it's good to go outside, good to meditate, good to journal, but it's a lot of basic things. And all of their legal information. Like, you know, I talked to some of the companies, some didn't respond, but mostly in their privacy policy, it says, do not use this for medical advice. Do not use it, you know, for like, you know, do not diagnose. And if you were ever to say like, I'm going to hurt myself or I'm going to hurt someone else, it would definitely all of the, I mean, ChatGPT and Bard and Pi also, like, they have safeguards in there to like, I'm not exactly sure. I know they will, like, just like Google will, if you Google, I want to kill myself, it's going to come up with a suicide hotline line. So it might go further. It might report that. I'm not exactly sure about those things, but yeah, basically, it was fine. And when I had a specific issue, it was definitely helpful in giving me advice, like more helpful than just like Googling it would be, because it was very specific to the requests that I made. And then, you know, but it also, it's interesting. It will give you different responses if you just asked it questions versus like if you use clinical terms, like I'm feeling depressed, like it then will remind you that it's a large language model and not a therapist, not a doctor. And I think those things are evolving. And it's when you get into like, I'm sure you've heard the stories of people using chatbots and really like feeling suicidal, and, you know, the chatbot sort of going wild and like recommending that, you know, you kill yourself or something like that. Those are all third party, like, you know, very, you know, rudimentary generative AI apps that like I wouldn't recommend. But these big ones, they're not gonna go haywire yet in that way.
Yeah, they're doing a lot to safeguard not only the people that are using it, but also protect themselves from anything like that happening. So it seems like they have those guardrails in place at least early on. Now, what about Pi? What's different about Pi? I was very unfamiliar with Pi when I read it in the article. This is actually backed by Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt, just as a couple of examples of who's, you know, putting their names and their money behind it. What is the focus of this chatbot, and how did it fare by comparison?
So Reid Hoffman is one of the other supporters. So it's like really gotten everybody, like, you know, from DeepMind and, you know, Google and like all these people and, you know, people formerly from OpenAI who've come together for this very specific purpose. And they've done a lot of consulting with therapists and other health professionals to really sort of focus on making it a companion. So it's Pi, stands for personal AI, personal intelligence. And it's really, it is really for that specific purpose. And it was disturbingly enjoyable to chat with Pi. And it, like, you can also like turn on the like a voice, so it could be a male voice or a female voice, and, you know, and it also is very validating, even more validating than the other ones. Like whatever I said, it was just like, good job, Megan, and or just, you know, like, have you considered this? Or it was very conversational, right down to like the weirdest part was, I mean, it was very like uncanny valley. So I asked it the same question about my son. You know, trying to get him to get a job, and how frustrating that was for like our relationship. And Pi said, you know, I would suggest you just do some gentle nudging. And I meant to type back, I did some gentle nudging, but instead I accidentally typed, I've done some gentle judging.
Oh no.
And then Pi responded, haha, I think you meant nudging, but judging works too.
Whoa,
so honestly,
it's got a sense of humor.
I know. And I mean, like, part of me is like, oh my God, that had to be an actual person on the other end. That cannot be artificial intelligence that would recognize my like Freudian slip there. But who knows? Yeah, but the biggest issue I want to mention before, and I'm sure we're almost out of time. I remember how this works, but privacy issues.
Yes, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, when you're in a therapy, and it's not a firm cutoff time, so it's okay. Things have changed a little bit since you were on.
Oh, okay.
But,
all right, we got a couple hours.
Yeah, let's just make ourselves
not
comfortable.
that much.
Usually, often in a therapy session, you go into a room. There's a white noise machine outside the door. The door closes. Everything spoken in the room is, considered confidential. There's a lot of these assurances. When you're talking to a computer, you just don't know. So did that impact you in this experience? And like, what about the assurances that the people creating these systems, what do they say about that?
Well, they all say that your information is anonymized and that you're not connected. It's not connected to your name. ChatGPT, you can turn off the chat history so that it's not used to train these large language models. It's not sent out there. Pi also says that it everything is secure and personal, just between you and the chatbot, unless you say something that's dangerous, unless you say something that will be a risk to yourself or others. But so that brings up a lot of things. One is that we all know any place can get hacked, any place can and will get hacked, and so you have to assume that whatever privacy they have, there's a potential that whatever you type in there could get out. And then there's just the nuance of being with a person and saying something like, "Oh, I'm so frustrated, I could kill that person," and your therapist knows you're not going to kill that person, but does an AI? Probably not. So there's that. There's just also the idea that, I think everyone should have access to therapy. And right now it's very gate kept, not just money, costs a lot. You maybe have to have a job with medical insurance. You have to live in a place where there are therapists. It's hard to find a therapist that looks like you if you're a marginalized person. So there's all those things. If we start saying you guys use this free therapy and I'm going to keep going to that, $500 an hour guy who graduated from Harvard. So there is that inequity that it causes. And of course, we all know that there's inequity in terms of who has rights to privacy as well. And so, there are a lot of questions. I think my belief is that the future will be at working in concert with a human, and not in the sense of you'll be chatting with it like a friend, but that it will be able to diagnose more conditions based on symptoms, because it just has all that information that
right.
Every psychiatrist doesn't necessarily have in their mind. So that's what I think the future of it will be. But for now, if you need a friend, and something very basic that is not a super private issue, I would suggest chat away.
Yeah, you could certainly check it out and see if it actually fulfills that need or what you're looking for going to it. And also understanding, like you said earlier, the people who have created these systems specify that these are not meant to be used in this particular way. So your mileage may and probably will totally vary on whether you get the answers that you're looking for, whether it gives you any of those those therapeutic aha moments. I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know, the connection, the empathy piece. I just have a really hard time feeling like I'm going to get that connection with a computer screen versus being in a room where I come up with that moment. And it's very impactful when that happens. And so I think these systems, I'm guessing, have a long way to go when it comes to that. But the basic stuff, like you're saying, totally, why not? That's and it's informed by a lot of factual information, hopefully, that's fed into it, right? As the research portion. So yeah.
That's the other thing. Of course, AI is prone to hallucinations and lies and could tell you very wrong things.
Yeah.
But one hopes that it doesn't.
Yeah. So,
and I mean, the one more like the existential part of it is like, if it does replace or really like equal human empathy, then that's a bigger question to grapple with. I mean, I know we don't have enough time to get into that.
Yeah.
I would love to. But yeah, I mean, because like then what does human empathy mean? What does it mean to be humans? I mean, because already we're like texting with friends and family back and forth. Like it's not that different. We just know there's a human on the other side. But here, like there absolutely is not.
Yeah, not until they've made themselves human. Anyways, not that I think that's going to happen anytime soon. Megan Morrone, always a pleasure getting the chance to talk to you and sometimes, get together for lunch and stuff. So thank you so much for coming on once our show, Tech News Weekly. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always fun.
Well, and you wrote this for Fast Company. You're writing for a lot of different places right now. Where can people keep track of everything that you're doing right now?
Pretty much Twitter or Threads. I'm at Megan Morrone on both. So yeah, like I've basically been posting things in both places. But yeah, I'm writing for Fast Company. I'm writing for IT Brew for all you IT people out there, and I'm also writing for BBC Work Life, and hopefully other places too soon.
There you go. Find Megan. If you've got another place and you like Megan, there you go. Match made in heaven. Thank you, Megan.
Thanks,
always
Megan.
A pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. And with that, we've reached the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. We do the show every Thursday, twit.tv/TNW. That's where you can go to subscribe to the show, because as we say week in and week out, that is one of the most important things you can do for the show and for the network is to subscribe to our podcasts so you get them delivered to you automatically. We appreciate it when you do that. Thank you.
And if you'd like to get all of our shows ad-free, plus a warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart, in your mind, and wherever else you feel warm, fuzzy feelings, consider joining the club, Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you do, you subscribe for $7 a month, $84 a year, you will get every single Twit show with no ads. It's just the content because you are supporting the network. You also gain access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra stuff you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, special Club Twit events all get published in the Twit Plus feed, and access to the members-only Discord server, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. My co-host for iOS Today, Rosemary Orchard, is one of the most active hosts in the Discord. Always great to get to chat with her, starting at $7 a month, $84 a year. It is a fantastic place to be, and we continue to add more and more to the club. We've got some great shows that are Club Twit exclusives, including the Untitled Linux Show. It is a show all about Linux. We've also got Paul Thurrott's Hands on Windows program, which is a short format show that covers Windows tips and tricks. My Hands on Mac program, which is a short format show that covers Apple tips and tricks. The episode that'll publish a little later today is all about hot corners on macOS.
The hottest of corners.
The hottest of corners. Woo, that's spicy. And the wonderful Scott Wilkinson has Home Theater Geeks now in the club. It is relaunched there. And there is soon to be a show covering the stuff we talked about today, AI in the club, featuring Jason Howell.
Yeah, I'll be sandboxing that actually today. It's be my second week in a row of sandboxing the AI show. So I'm going to be chatting with Anthony Nielsen. He's going to tell us about how AI integrates here at Twit.
Ooh,
different things that we do here at
secrets. That's really cool. That'll be valuable for anybody who's, maybe wanting to do some of the stuff that we do. So definitely don't miss that. You still have time to join Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit, so you can check that out. If you'd like to follow me online, I am at Mikah Sargent at many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Please do check out Hands on Mac if you are a Club Twit subscriber or will soon be. Also check out on Sundays, the wonderful Ask the Tech Guys show, where Leo Laporte and I take your questions live on air and do our best to answer them. And on Tuesdays, of course, you can watch iOS Today with Rosemary Orchard and yours truly, where we talk all things iOS, tvOS, HomePod OS, watchOS. It's all the OSs Apple has on offer. We love to talk about them on iOS Today. I think that's it, and that's all. So Jason Howell, tell us about you.
Well, you can find me at Jason Howell on Twitter, twit.social/@JasonHowell. That Jason Howell, it just really depends, but probably Jason Howell is in there to some degree. I'm just not nearly as good at locking in my usernames in all the different places as you are, obviously, Mikah. So anyway, so just search for me. You'll probably find me somehow. I do this show, of course, also doing, the AI show, working on that, and going to be doing that today in the club. So that's coming soon for club members. But that's really it for me. You can find me in all those places. And yeah, I think we've reached the end. So thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. So thank you at home. Thanks to everybody here in the studio for helping us do the show each and every week. Couldn't do it without the Johns. And Ant, I think, was in here. Burke tested some people. So thanks for our team. And thanks to you for watching. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Robot.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club TWiT. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows. Plus, membership in the Club TWiT Discord, a great clubhouse for TWiT listeners. And finally, the TWiT Plus feed with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, The Giz Fizz, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And thanks for your support.